Hello, everybody. It's Alex from Remote Work Life. I'm here today with a very important guest. I'm here with Dr. Karthik Ramanen. Now, Dr. Karthik Ramanen, also known as Dr. K, he helps high achieving professionals and entrepreneurs who suffer with constant stress. Now, Dr. K will help you end your burnout so that you can reclaim your energy and passion for life. And the Dr. K show, which airs each week, he will discuss, or on the Dr. K show, which airs each week, he'll discuss topics for high achieving professionals and entrepreneurs to end burnout and build emotional health. And as you can hear, this is why I said at the top show, it's a very important topic and Dr. K is a very important guest. So Dr. K, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me today and you're very welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's, you reached out to me on LinkedIn. We connected on Instagram. We talked a little bit and said, this is, I think we have a lot in common, both in terms of our past, which, we'll get into. So I'm very honored to be here.
And it's great to have you. And as I said, I think we're going to be talking about something that is important, but also it's probably affecting quite a lot of people. And I think so we can start the year off on a good footing. I think it's important to have the right kind of person, the right kind of vibe, the right kind of energy, the right kind of mindset. So Dr. K, I'm just so glad you're able to join me today and talking about how we've got, I suppose, that synergy in terms of our thought processes. I want to know a little bit about you. How did you come to be the emotional health mentor that you are today?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. So, I started, doing my undergraduate career at Cornell University here in the U.S. I studied applied economics and management and biological sciences. I was a double major. And I found myself after that, I was thinking about going into the biotech industry and that sort of thing, and eventually just found myself actually leaving the biology at the time. And I went to work at Wall Street at Goldman Sachs back in 2005, and spent the next 8 years there. Had a very good career. Was able to contribute quite a bit and move up. But it all did come at a little bit of a cost. As it was, I went into, past my undergraduate career, I was a little bit unhealthy on physically larger and everything else. And the stress of working the very long hours in any corporate environment, right? And especially in among other high achievers where we're really trying to deliver a lot of value to our clients and everything else. And of course, we had 2008 and the recession and all the challenges that came from that. So to take care of myself was not a priority, and it was really just try to do the best we can, keep our head above water in some cases, and just again try to do the best we can for our clients at the time. And so like I said, I was able to get the promotions and all that other stuff. And I found myself at a point a little bit further along a few years down the road in my career there at a place where I was able to pay off my undergraduate student debt. I was able to pay off my parents' credit card debt, and I was able to do more for charity and sponsor, families in a way that I never thought I could in my late 20s. I mean, it was really fulfilling in that respect. But I remember one day specifically, I was standing at the window of my wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling window of this apartment, looking over the New Jersey horizon. There's not a single building of that height on that 30th floor of that skyrise in my view. So I got this clear, beautiful view of the New Jersey horizon, literally feeling on top of the world in terms of the view. And like I said, it was, had all those fulfilling things with that I was able to do because of my career, except I had this sinking, painful feeling that I hated the man in the mirror. I absolutely had, even though it was high achieving on the outside, everybody, saw me a certain way and I was able to perform well on the inside. Nobody knew just how much confidence I lacked, how much I just dreaded being seen, dreaded just feeling shameful, in part because, again, I was 250 pounds at the time. I was just unhealthy, unhappy, very lonely. Dating wasn't going well, and nobody knew what was going on in my life. And it was just at that point where things were not. I realized that just because it looks good on the outside, it's more important for it to be in integrity on the inside. And as fate would have it, I met up with my sister at one point, and then 3 months later. And in that 3 months, she had lost 30 pounds and her cystic acne had cleared up and she looked incredible. And I was just at one of those rock bottom points. Mm-hmm. And I know rock bottom doesn't sound like a very good place, but the truth is, and I've found this out multiple times in my life, this being one of them, that rock bottom is a beautiful place because this is a place where we are willing to do anything. We're willing to do the things that we would not be willing to do otherwise, right? And I was just at one of those points. I asked her, so what did you do? You look great. And she said, I've just been eating a raw plant-based diet. I'm like, what do you mean raw plant-based? What does that mean? And she said, I've just been eating fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, just as they're found in nature, uncooked, apple off the tree, that sort of thing. And I was like, what? That sounds absolutely crazy. Fine, I'll try it. I had nothing to lose. When we feel we have nothing to lose, we are willing to do the most incredible things. And I eased myself into it. And within 3 weeks, I was at the lowest weight I'd ever been as an adult. And that's when something clicked in my head. And I said, wait a second. What if I can have the body I thought I never could have? What if I can have the physical attractiveness that I never thought I would have? What if it is possible? What if I could be different? And I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't put any expectations on myself. I just started eating this way. I started getting healthier, and slowly people started noticing at the office, and I would get people asking me, hey, Karthik, can you help me lose a few pounds here before this wedding I got to go to, and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I just give them recipes and whatnot. And then the craziest things happen. I saw type 2 diabetes go away, hypertension, cholesterol. And I thought, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but their lives are transforming. My life is transforming. I don't know what this is, but I got to do this for my career, right? And as I just went down this journey, ended up losing 100 pounds and discovering, hey, there's purpose in this. So I did some research and I found out about this form of medicine called naturopathic medicine that we're licensed in almost half the states here in the United States. And, it's a form of medicine that basically works with the body's ability to heal itself. So we're functionally looking at hormone levels. We're looking at different ways in which nutrition affects how we the balance again in hormones, balance in metabolism, everything else. How does nutrition affect the prevalence of chronic diseases? Everything else that I started researching, and I said, okay, you know what? I don't want to go back to school. I was going to be 30 pretty soon at that time, and I'm like, I don't want to go back to school. But I called up my sister and I said, what do you think if I make sure the prerequisites, all that stuff, and apply and see if I can go back to medical school for this? And she said, one of the best naturopathic schools in the country is right next to where I live now. Wow. In Arizona. I was like, what? No way. So I decided I'm going to move from New York to Arizona, and I'm going to leave my career. And it was lucrative career, but I said, this is where I need to be. This is where I'm being called. So I did that. And I remember I'm on the plane for, the movers have taken all my boxes. I just got my carry-on and I'm flying, and I'm on the plane. I'm looking out, literally leaving my old life behind me. Right. And embarking in this new healthy life, new career coming up. And I remember on the plane thinking, oh my goodness, nobody knows me in Arizona. Nobody knows me. This is an opportunity for me to show up as this new version of myself and see what kind of impact I can make. So I took out a sheet of paper and a pen, and I just started writing, what does Dr. K of the future look like? How does he think? How does he eat? How does he treat others? How does he treat himself? What are his morning routines? What are his evening routines? What books does he read? Does he even read books? I didn't really read any books at the time. I started reading like crazy, right? So all these things, and I had that list, and then I started implementing those things right away, as if I already was Dr. K of the future. And in doing so, I went to medical school, and I showed up as a completely different guy. Showed up as somebody that I had never been before. A leader, somebody that took chances, stepped out of my comfort zone over and over. And in the process, I also happened to attract someone in my class who is now my wife because, I wasn't looking for romance, right? I was truly working on myself, but I became somebody that became magnetic to her and she became magnetic to me, right? And that was really, it started as friendship and obviously evolved to so much more. It taught me so much about anything is possible in our life if we really commit to, yes, for me, the catalyst was nutrition, but ultimately it was the change up here. It was the commitment to emotional health that really drove a drastic change. And then in the years that followed, got my doctorate in naturopathic medicine, got my licensure and everything else. And as of last year, I really started to say, hey, I can work with a patient one-on-one and we can come up with a perfect treatment plan. Let's say it's type 2 diabetes. We can work through that with nutrition, mindset, everything else. I come back a month later and haven't done anything. So I realized, okay, the magic for a lot of people is probably not in the doctor's visit itself. Maybe the magic is in between the visits. What if I could help people here? What if I could help people develop strong emotional health so that they can be resilient, right, to the stressors of life that come up, so that we can stay committed to the things that we believe in, stay committed to improving our health, our relationships, our careers, everything else, right? So I decided, how could I go about doing that? And I thought about, well, why don't I shift my focus toward that educational component of it, right? Whether it's creating content online, doing online workshops over the course of, depending on the topic, up to even 90-day workshops, so that we can really build with accountability how to grow into the person that we wish to be. And that's how the emotional health mentor came to be. And that's what I do today. I absolutely love, and this is all and I'm living proof that the way that things used to be is not the way that things have to be. And it's really up to us to take charge of our life and get the resources and the help that we need in order to live the life that we know we want.
No, it sounds good. And you've just really made a turnaround in terms of your life, I guess, your entire life by the sounds of it. And yeah, you found your calling. You're on your way in terms of using all the information that you gathered about your career and the things that didn't work, and now you've translated that into your business and helping other people, which I think is like the ultimate in terms of purpose. And so tell us about your business and I did give some hints in the introduction, but who do you serve and why is your service so important?
Well, it's like I said, I come from whatever you want to call a high achieving background, whether it's Ivy League university, Wall Street, medical school. I completely understand the mentality of overachieving, perfectionism, dealing with imposter syndrome and acting through it anyway. All of those challenges, hoping that at a certain level of achievement, we can feel good about ourselves, and knowing that day never comes. That day never comes, because you can't out-achieve self-criticism. You can't out-achieve burnout. You have to really, go about it in a different way. The way I explain it is this, right? So imagine you're, from a personal development standpoint, you're a block of ice at 0 degrees. All you want to do is to get to 32 degrees. 32 degrees, melt and become free-flowing water, energetic, able to adapt, powerful, loving, right? That's the person you want to be. So at 0 degrees, you start to read the books. You'll listen to podcasts like ours, right? You start to go to seminars. Maybe you go to therapy. Maybe you go to a functional medicine or a naturopathic doctor, get your hormone levels checked, everything. You get better and better and better and healthier and happier, right? 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 15 degrees. Somewhere around 20 degrees, 25 degrees, you look at yourself and you say, I'm still a block of ice. Has anything really changed? I go to a seminar, I get really excited for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's back to before. I don't feel like I'm really changing. But really, is it that 1 degree from 31 degrees to 32 that makes the state change from ice to water? It's not. It's the latent potential energy that's been changing all along the way. It's just that we haven't gotten to that breakthrough point yet. But what people don't realize is that the work that it takes to go from 25 degrees to 32 degrees Fahrenheit is not the same that it takes to go from 0 degrees to 25 degrees. And as an emotional health mentor, I help people go from 25 to 32.
Wow. And I love the analogy. I love it. And actually, one thing I wanted to ask before we get into because we're going to talk a bit about emotional resilience, but if somebody is, I guess, recognizes any of the symptoms that you've described, other than obviously getting in touch with you, I'm obviously going to leave your details in the show notes as well. You had your sister, and you had somebody there in front of you as an example. What would you advise somebody to do? Because I think there's lots of people who may not know what step to take next in terms of getting the help that they need.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is circumstantial, right? Like I fell into so much good fortune along the way, but the truth is that if we are open to accepting the good fortune that does come our way and acting upon it, it doesn't become good fortune until we act upon it, right? But in terms of, if you wanted to change one aspect that can have the greatest lever toward change is your environment. It's your environment. We've heard all the time, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You're the average of the 5 ideas that you spend the most time with. If you find that the people around you are adding stress, are adding complications, are adding challenges, if the people around you do not inspire you through their own actions, right, to grow and do great things for other people and live a life of purpose, if you don't have those type of people around you, the easiest way to bring that into your life is to find those people and spend a little less time with the ones who drain you. And so listen, there's going to be people that we're with that, we can't cut them out of our lives, but you can always inspire them to grow. It could take time, could take a lot of time by your own example. So it's just super, super important to spend your time, fill your mind with ideas, spend your time with people that inspire you to grow, because ultimately we are a social species. We do adapt and evolve with each other, and having the right people around you makes all the difference.
Yeah, I second that. I love that. And in the meantime, though, I think it's important. I think we're going to be talking about emotional resilience today, and especially as we're into a fresh start. It's a new year ahead, and we're looking towards not only what you've just suggested in terms of probably looking at our networks, understanding who we can turn to, who is probably not so effective in terms of helping us out. In a way, sweeping the cobwebs away for a new beginning, almost for the year ahead. And one of the things that you are great with is helping people to build emotional resilience. But there may be some people out there who may not know necessarily what it is. Obviously, emotional resilience is all about making yourself become more resilient. But what is emotional resilience, and why is that important?
So I'm going to zoom out before I answer that question to the overall topic of emotional health. So the term of emotional health, and part of emotional health is emotional resilience. So emotional health is a person's ability to identify process, act upon feelings in specific circumstances and over the course of time. And it incorporates emotional intelligence and what we're talking about here, emotional resilience. So quickly, emotional intelligence is your awareness of your own emotional state, the capacity to understand someone else's emotional state, especially in response to, external things, external stimuli that happen in our life. So, have you've ever been around somebody who, like, especially in the face of immediate adversity, they just know how to carry themselves in that moment. They know how to interact with others. They just have that sense of self and that sense of someone else to be able to act appropriately for that situation. So emotional intelligence is unbelievably important for leaders, for leadership, because it's so much of it. It's not even treat others how you want to be treated. It's treat others how they expect you to treat them, right? Obviously, there's ways of adjusting and according so that you move forward as an organization. But ultimately, emotional intelligence, you have to be in tune with yourself before you can ever understand someone else. The other part of emotional health is emotional resilience. So this is the ability to adjust to circumstances, to recover from emotional setback. How well do we respond to bad news when we get it? How long does it take? Are we the type of person that's going to sit and dwell on something terrible that happened and continue to live that misery, that tragedy, take on that victim mentality, or do setbacks do setbacks and acute stress send us down a dark road that we're not able to recover from? Or is it something where we can take bad news, we'll grieve it for a certain amount of time. If it's significant news, it might take a longer time. When the pandemic hit in 2020, even for me, there were days where I recognized what was happening. It's like those questions start coming up, like, is life ever going to go back to the way it was? Can we ever enjoy a concert again or a sporting event? And those type of questions start coming up. And it's okay to start to grieve those moments, right? But emotional resilience is being able to get back up and figure out how to handle it. So emotional resilience is being able to process those emotions. And this is where it's so important, because most people don't process. Most people, their coping mechanism is to avoid, right? You either avoid through putting your head in the sand. That was me a lot of the time. Avoid through, could be alcohol, could be drugs, could be overeating. That was also me, right? And so to not be able to process emotions leads to lack of emotional resilience, because once you've processed an emotion, then you can have the clarity to say, okay, what are the things that I can control? What are the things that I cannot control? Let me focus on the things that I can control. So what does that end up looking like? It also ends up looking like, how do I avoid situations that will put me in a negative headspace, right? So emotional resilience is about as much prevention as it is processing and moving forward. So it's really about how quickly can you return to your fully functioning state of mind.
No, it sounds good. And you've kind of alluded to a few, I guess, influences on, emotional resilience. Are there any that perhaps that you didn't experience yourself that might, some of our audience might recognize? Any typical triggers, I guess you might say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much of it is based on our own individual past, how we were raised, the ideas that we were raised with, the beliefs about ourselves, trauma, right? And sometimes trauma is significant trauma, like we talk about, and that unfortunately a lot of people go through, abuse, or loss, significant loss when they're children. Sometimes trauma is not even. Sometimes, I talked to a lot of people. Some of my clients were like, hey, I didn't have those challenges growing up, right? I didn't have those problems, those traumas when I was a kid, but I still can't shake the idea that I had a poor childhood. I still can't shake the idea, that negativity toward themselves. Still, again, high achieving people, by the way, very high achieving. You wouldn't know it necessarily talking to them up, initially, but so. Yeah, trauma has a big part of it, but it's just those experiences. Because sometimes, it could have been as simple as you're 7 years old, parent comes back after a long day, and, maybe they're tired. They say something innocently, but for a child, that can translate not into, parent had a rough day, could translate into I am not enough. They don't want to spend time with me. And then as we grow up, those seeds start growing into full trees, these full belief patterns of I am not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not fit enough, I'm not healthy enough, I'm not capable enough, fill in the blank. And some people cope with that over the course of time by out achieving. It's like, I'm not good. You said I'm not good enough. I'm going to show you. And they just out achieve. And ultimately, they don't even remember how the idea came into their head. Somebody else's voice became their own, and running from that negativity inside our head saying we're not good enough. So, but ultimately no level of achievement erases that negative voice. So that influences emotional, but really it's the environment all along. Like, who did we grow up around? Who were the good influences around us? Did we learn coping skills at a young age, or did we not? Most people don't, unfortunately. I wish, if there's one thing that I wish we could add to curriculums in school, it would be, well, two things. One, personal finance, super important. Number two, actually, I guess number two would be personal finance. Number one would be coping skills, because if we could develop strong coping skills when we're younger, it would give us so much of a better chance to move through life with much more resilience, so that when it's not a matter of if we get knocked down, we all get knocked down. Life happens. Things happen. We experience loss. We experience accidents, the things that blindside us, terrible things, right? Or it could be something that was not even in our direct life, right? The pandemic affected all of us, right? Initially, it affected all of us. And then as time went on, it affected some of us individually as well, whether it was family members, whether it was ourselves, right? But initially, when, for a lot of people, when the lockdowns first hit and everything else, it was, we hadn't come in contact with it ourselves, or we didn't even know anybody who did. But now all of a sudden, life as we know it has changed. Coping skills, grieving, like these are really, really important to be able to go through. And it's really the foundation for emotional resilience. But there are more things to it, and we'll talk about here pretty soon when we talk about tips and whatnot. About the 5 pillars of emotional health.
No, excellent. I love that. And talking about coping skills, there's actually a couple of questions to that, because it's phenomenal, isn't it? The especially as a child. I'm a Gen Xer, so growing up, if I was going through a rough time, either at school or sometimes even my family members, they'd just say, come on, stiff upper lip, and kind of, you'll get through it. You kind of just try to build your own sort of shield, your own resilience in that way. And you try and, I guess, in a way, trying to develop your own coping strategies, your own coping skills, as you were saying. But I don't think that is enough. And like you said, it's something that probably should be, certainly should be taught in schools. What you're finding now actually is, I don't know to what level this is happening, but there are businesses, and I don't know if it's specifically or especially remote businesses, but I know a lot of leaders within remote businesses are taking on coaches to help their teams to actually cope with certain scenarios, certain situations, and so that they get the support that they need. And it's not just a matter of, deal with it, stiff upper lip, that kind of thing. So the question I wanted to ask really is, how do you develop those coping skills, and what are they?
Yeah, it's, I think it all boils down. It starts with communication, because, I certainly experienced much of what you were just talking about too. Toughen up, be a man.
Yes.
It's a common one, right? Especially for us guys, like, be a man, But that is a coping skill. That is one coping skill is to have that tough shield, that exterior, so that when things happen, you do have the ability to just not be swayed so quickly by the wind that is blowing at you, right? So that is a skill. However, if that's the only skill in your toolbox, it doesn't work all the time. Another skill, and this is where the part that I think is really lost, is the ability, just the ability to talk through challenges, right? To express how we are feeling, and to have somebody on the other end who is a good listener, who will not judge you as you are speaking. Because if two people can communicate with each other without judgment, to say, and this also boils down to what makes for one of the things that makes for a good relationship, romantic relationship,
Absolutely.
right? Is the ability to communicate, to say, this is what happened. Like, something happened, there's a disconnect. So instead of saying, you did this, right? And now look what happened. Instead of that, it's simply, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's coming up for me. Because sometimes we know that the thoughts that come up, the feelings that come up are not the same as what we know to be true. I mean, if you're listening to this and you've had that thought, I know I'm not seeing you right now, but raise your hand, right? You ever had those feelings where you what you're feeling, is completely out of line with rational thought, but you can't stop the feeling anyway, right? I mean, it happens. So that the coping skill of being able to talk it through with somebody, the coping skill of just simply being able to just being willing to get help, because there's a stigma around that for some people. There was a stigma around that for me. I had to learn the hard way that even after I had gone through a lot of, that transformation we talked about, there was a period a couple of years ago that, my fiance at the time, we were having some challenges logistically with, she was working in another town. We didn't get to see each other as much as we were planning for the wedding and everything else. It was a challenging time, and we're still trying to figure out our careers post, our medical training and all that. And really, I had the lesson that I went through another, relative rock bottom at that time. And the lesson that I had to learn from that was, we all need to reach out for help. And I did. And that was an incredible lesson that, hey, we don't have to go at this alone. Another coping skill, getting help. Right. Mm-hmm. So these are just mechanisms, but there's also the element of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, to notice, hey, I'm having an intense urge to go have a drink to deal with this problem, right? Or instead of dealing with this problem, going to have a drink is a coping skill, not a good one, right? Mm-hmm. It's not effective because it ends up for a lot of people as alcoholism. So, but then somebody else can have a relationship with alcohol that's perfectly, like they just every once in a while, just a little bit with certain circumstances. They don't have the same addictive personality to it. I had an addictive personality with food. Took a long time to undo that. Even after I got healthy, I still had the addictive personality with food because it started up here. So coping skills, understanding what are healthy ones, what are not healthy ones, and ultimately the people around you, and getting the right help.
Yeah, and that sense of realization as well, isn't it? It's there are those that probably realize what they're going through and then get help, and those that realize that something is not right, but probably try and sort of, like you said, use things to either block it out and to really just to make it better. But it's only obviously a temporary thing. You mentioned alcohol or all those sorts of addictive things. Actually, another question, which has actually just come off top of mind, in terms of if you see one of your team, your colleagues, your friends, your college friend or whatever, and you suspect that they're going through something like this, this is quite close to home for me. If you suspect that they're going through something themselves, how do you broach that subject with them? How do you actually kind of, because nobody wants to think that they're sort of their mind is probably not in the place that it should be. You don't want to make them
Right.
feel as though they're inadequate or that they're going crazy or whatever it may be, because I think that's still a stigma that people attach to mental health and mental illness. How do you actually broach that with somebody?
Well, it takes.
Not an easy question.
Yeah. Well, here's the important thing. To be able to help somebody, you first have to help yourself. Because I think the main reason why people don't ask others truly how they're doing, we say, "How are you?" "I'm fine." "Are you really fine?" Are you really asking, "How are you?" Do you really want to hear the answer? I remember back in, when I used to, was a working career, even in college, you pass by somebody, you're walking, especially in New York, right? You're walking by, you're like, "How are you?" And by the time you could even answer, they've already passed you.
Yeah.
It's like you're not actually asking how I am, right? But that happens to a lot of people. So I think a lot of people, when you ask the words "How are you?" or whatever it is in common parlance where you are, right? They don't hear it as you really care. But what I like to say, the first part of that is being able to work on your own emotional intelligence so that you are willing and able to hear what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, when you do ask somebody and you start to listen, don't try to provide solutions right away unless they want you to provide solutions. Because the reason people don't get help a lot of times is because they don't want to be told what to do, what not to do. Oftentimes, and this is for women and men, we just want to be heard. We just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. Just being heard is therapeutic in many cases, right? So if you get yourself to a state, and it's not that hard once you practice it a little bit, to just be able to listen and just be there. Like when you take the burden of having to solve the problem off of yourself and just say, I'm just here for you. I'm just here for you, right? So the question I like to ask when I know I have a friend that's going through some tough time is, how are you feeling? Right? Because this is not about how are you is a little vague, but how are you feeling? Like what emotions?
It's a big difference.
It's a big difference. So that's one way that I approach it. And the other aspect is just saying, if they don't want to go into it, you just say, I understand, it's tough to talk about everything right now, but I just want to let you know that I am here with you. I am here for you. And please allow me to help you in any way that you need right now. I'm here with you. When people know that they have support, they might not be ready to speak it in the moment, but I find oftentimes that they will reach out. If not for that specific problem that they're dealing with at that time, at some point down the road, where they're just like, can we talk? I just need somebody to talk to, somebody to sound off. That's all it is. But the key part, how you reinforce that they can talk to you, that you can be there for them, is to just listen. You don't have to solve the problem. Don't try to solve the problem unless they want your advice to, hey, what do you think I should do? Then, of course, give your opinion.
Sure. But
to really just to just be there for them is the most important thing.
No, of course, I love that. Dr. K, I just want to ask if you could share some of your tips on, you mentioned the five pillars. Share some tips with us in terms of how we can build our emotional resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I teach what I call the 5 pillars of emotional health. And if you build emotional health, that's emotional intelligence and emotional resilience. Mm-hmm. And realistically, emotional resilience, I think, is emotional intelligence. Yeah, it's that ever-growing underlying skill. But emotional resilience is functionally what we're after, right? Like the ability to just be able to handle life and to still move forward towards our dreams, right? So the 5 pillars of emotional health are, number 1, what I call your psychology, the way you think, your default thought patterns and behaviors, the way that you the way that you see yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, your ability and willingness to step outside of your comfort zone to discover what patterns have been running your life, your psychology. Number two is your relationships. So again, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Working on your relationships means addressing the pain points with your significant other, others that are close to you. It means having conversations with your boss, your coworkers, to create an environment around you that's conducive to emotional intelligence and emotional resilience. It's releasing who you think you're supposed to be around them and embracing who you truly are to attract the best people into your life. That's number 2. Number 3, your nutrition. And what does nutrition have to do with emotional health? Actually, a lot. If we can agree that if our brain and nerve function isn't operating at proper capacity, then we're not going to feel well. If we don't feel well, our emotional resilience will suffer. So the neurotransmitters are chemical messengers, compounds that aid in sending signals throughout our nervous system. So neurotransmitter examples are adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, many, many others. Mm-hmm. What you might not know is that 90% of the neurotransmitters in our body come from our gut. 90% of the neurotransmitters in our body come from our gut. There's an estimated 100 trillion bacteria that live in our gut that are responsible. A lot of them are responsible for neurotransmitter production, regulation, and a lot of other things that we're learning about daily, but also immune function, and so many other functions here. So the bacteria provide us the essential compounds that we need for the function. We provide them a place to live. So it's this nice symbiotic relationship. But the types of bacteria that grow that give us that optimal function depends on the food that we eat. So if we eat too many foods that harm our gut microbes, we're going to lose a little bit of that body function that those microbes provide. So diets that are high in refined sugars, fried fats, processed foods, animal products, they might help us like, oh, I like those foods, especially they could be a coping mechanism, right? When we're not feeling good to have a cupcake or a donut or ice cream or a hot dog or whatever, right? Nachos. But they push us toward a suboptimal gut microbiome. On the other hand, diets that are full of more whole plant foods and more insoluble fiber are essential to giving us a thriving gut microbiome and therefore a thriving emotional resilience. Number 4 is sleep. So let's be honest, right? High achievers are like, sleep is for the weak. I got this project. I'll sleep later. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like we stay up late, get up early. Doesn't matter, right? That's what we do. And I totally get it, because when I was an undergrad at Cornell, I had 30 weeks in my first year, 2 semesters, 15 weeks each. And in those 30 weeks, I pulled 37 all-nighters.
What?
So more than one, I averaged more than one all-nighter a week. I went one phase of time where I went 100 hours without sleeping. And then I went to Wall Street in my 20s and I got a little more sleep, like 5 hours, 6 hours. Yay. And eventually it caught up to me. Absolutely caught up to me. It eventually catches up to everybody. You can't, sleep is when we develop long-term memories. Sleep is when we process the day's events. Sleep is when our brain actually goes through physical detoxification processes during those hours of sleep. So one day here and there, we have to do what we got to do. That's fine. But on a regular basis, we have to prioritize sleep. But prioritizing sleep is not just enough. We have to understand what are the factors that give us poor sleep, right? So that we can start to change it. So if we're on our phones at night, first thing in the morning, that's going to affect our sleep. If we don't get enough sunlight exposure during the day to set our circadian rhythm so that we have proper hormone balances of cortisol and melatonin from, throughout the day, that's going to affect our sleep. That's also going to affect our appetite, which could make us make bad decisions on the nutrition front. See how they all interact with each other. So sleep is incredibly important. And if you want to end burnout, if you want to build strong emotional resilience, sleep is absolutely required. 8 hours a night, some people 9 hours a night, but it's also about the quality of that sleep. Then comes your exercise. That's number 5, body motion. Motion dictates emotion. Think about how great we feel after a workout, right? That endorphin rush, your blood's flowing, you're getting blood to your brain. It feels in those moments that your mind and your body are in sync.
Sure.
And that's what we want to create in all aspects of our day. Working out isn't as much about weight loss as it is about training your body to operate at the highest level. So if you want to feel good, you want to feel your best, there's really no substitute for moving your body. Emotional resilience requires that body movement, especially movement that includes being outside, getting that sunlight, obviously vitamin D production, so many other benefits of that as well. So those are the 5 pillars of emotional health, which will help you build strong emotional resilience, prioritizing your psychology, your relationships, nutrition, sleep, and exercise.
Wonderful. And tell you what, the more we've been talking here on this podcast, is the more questions that have popped up into my head. So I'm sure there's another podcast or hopefully, at least in that for us, because I think I know that it's been therapeutic for me, and it's been informative for me listening to you, Dr. K. And I'm sure there was 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 people out there, hopefully as well, that have found this useful. I'm sure that there are. And what I guess I want to know is if there are questions that need to be answered, where can they find you, and what are your plans for the year ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at my website, drkarthikramanen.com. A shortcut for that is DRK, Dr. K, NMD, naturopathic medical doctor, drknmd.com. That'll take you to the same place. But also, if you're interested, you can follow me on social media. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. Feel free to follow me there. And if you're really interested in, like I said, you're at that, remember that ice cube analogy?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, okay, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm really ready to take it up a few notches. If I do have several workshops, online workshops, that are open to anybody in the world, starting January through the end of the year. And the first one coming up is, if you're listening to this podcast around when it goes live, is ending self-criticism. And self-criticism, it's really designed for, again, the high achiever who's desperately ready to stop being their own worst enemy, to move past imposter syndrome, to move past procrastination, to move past self-sabotage, and to really live into that realm of being kinder to ourselves so that we can be better for the people that we're serving. But so you can go to endselfcriticism.com for that, or just to see what's coming up on the calendar for the months ahead, go to emotionalhealthworkshops.com. You can bookmark that one, emotionalhealthworkshops.com. I'll be updating it constantly with the new stuff that are coming out, so you can get the help that you need and move forward, really to stop chasing joy and begin living in wonder.
No, it sounds good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the links that we need so that everybody can access the help that they need. I'm going to put the links in the show notes. So check out, if you're on Apple or Spotify, wherever it may be, just scroll down a little bit to the show notes and check out the links below and speak to Dr. K via the links. But Dr. K, it has been an absolute pleasure. It's been an eye-opener. It's been informative. As I said, it's been very close to home for me. So there's a few tips that I'm going to be taking away from this and sharing as well. And just wanted to say thank you to you for joining me today. And yeah, let's keep up to date with what you're doing and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely, Alex. It was such a joy to chat with you today, and definitely, we'll do a part 2.